Myself Babakulu.
Hello, myself Carol.
Myself Keetu. Myself Suchitra.
Myself Anusha.
Myself Priyanka. Myself Sanjana. And today we are going to discuss the topic of drugs. Start the discussion. Okay, before getting into the topic, let us know the importance of chemistry in our daily life. Our life is completely dependent on chemistry. Right in the morning we wake up, we need toothpaste and food we eat. When we swallow our first bite of food, chemical reaction starts in our body immediately. Right. Pills and medicines we use to treat our illness are all made of chemicals. And we are indebted to the chemists for giving us life-saving drugs, fertilizers, pesticides, etc. And let us getting into the topic. We are mainly talking about drugs. Medicines we use to treat our illness are all made of chemicals. And we are indebted to the chemists for giving us life-saving drugs, fertilizers, pesticides, etc. And let us getting into the topic. We are mainly talking about drugs. What are drugs? Drugs are the chemical substances of low molecular mass which interact with macromolecular targets and produces biological response. And when these biological responses have therapeutic value, then it is called medicines, which are used for prevention, diagnosis, and cure of some illness. And when these chemicals are taken in doses higher than recommended, they may convert into poisons. Hence, we can say that all the medicines are drugs, but all drugs are not medicines. Classified mainly based on the following criteria. First one, pharmacological effect. Second one, chemical structure. Third one, drug actions. And fourth one, molecular weight. Can you add some more points about this classification? Yes. First one is based on pharmacological effect. For example, analgesics have pain relieving effect, where antipyretics have can ability to lower the body temperature in case of fever. Second one is based on the chemical structures. Drugs classified in this way share common structural features and often have similar pharmacological activity. For example, sulfonamides. They have common structural features. Most of them shows antibacterial properties. And third one is based on drug action. This type of classification is based on the action of drug and a particular biological process. For example, antihistamine inhibit the growth of histamines, which causes inflammation in the body. Fourth one is based on molecular targets. Drugs usually interact with biomolecules such as proteins, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, etc. And these biomolecules are called molecular targets, are also called as drug targets. Drugs possessing some common structural features may have the same mechanism of action on targets. This classification is most useful classification for medicinal or chemists. Have you heard about the drug target interaction?
Yes, actually I have been heard that the drug target interactions are being morely about the active sites. Let me take a deep into it.
Explain what are drug target interaction?
Yeah, sure. The drug target interactions are biomolecules perform a variety of atoms like atomic functions have been taking place in the body itself. For example, proteins we can consider. There are enzymes and receptor function taking place. So particularly enzyme functions are deeply particularly connected with the biological aspects, whereas receptor are being particularly concepts with the communicational effects. Enzymes as drug targets are catalytic functions have been taking place in the enzymes. So first let us know the two main functions taking place. So first function of enzyme is to hold a substrate for a chemical reaction taking place where an active site is being placed out. So in an enzyme itself, active sites of an enzyme hold a substrate molecule in a suitable positions so that they may be attacked by any reagents have been taking place, effectively it takes place. So substrates bind to the active sites of an enzyme through a variety of interactions such as ionic bonding, hydrogen bonding, dipole-dipole interactions also, and also the van der Waals effect too. Active sites of the enzymes are being placed in the enzymes itself. Okay, enzymes are being placed where there is the presence of an active site. So the active site where the substrate is being taking the position in it. The second function of an enzyme is to provide the functional group that can attack the substrate, carry out the chemical reaction itself. It is a two process taking place over here. Next, let us move to the drug enzyme interaction. So drug enzyme interaction is inhibiting. Drug inhibits the attachment of the substrate on the active sites of the enzymes in two different ways. So active sites of the enzymes are being placed in the enzymes itself. Okay, enzymes are being placed where there is the presence of an active site. So the active site where the substrate is being taking the position in it. The second function of an enzyme is to provide the functional group that can attack the substrate, carry out the chemical reaction itself. It is a two process taking place over here. Next, let us move to the drug enzyme interaction. Let us move to the drug enzyme interaction deep. Here also the two major topics are going on. So first one, let us know the drug inhibits the attachment of the substrate on the active sites of the enzyme in two different ways. Here also, but here particularly taking place of inhibition of the drug. So let us move on to the two basic concepts over here. The drug compete with the natural substrate in the first one. So here the natural substrate for their attachment on the active sites of the enzyme, such drugs are called as competitive drugs. So here also the same concept takes place, but here inhibition takes place of the drugs. Drugs go on to the substrate atoms, the substrate and where the substrate will taking place. So that active sites is being occupied by the drugs on the enzymes itself. So second topic, let us move on to the drug and the substrate competing for the active sites. So here some drugs do not bind to the active sites of the enzymes, particularly taking place of the natural substrates. So here there is a taking place of allostatic sites are being there. The allostatic sites are the sites where these are the extra sites. The upper part can be considered as the active sites and the lower part can be considered as allostatic sites. This binding of inhibitors at the allostatic sites changes the shape of the active sites itself. Totally the enzyme is being changed in such a way that the substrate fails to recognize the active sites itself. So here the different concept is been taking place. So here the bonding is also different in different types of drugs in the enzymes. So let us know more by going on.
As Carol has explained, drug-target interaction, do you know anything about the receptor as the drug interaction? So let us know about receptors. These receptors are nothing but the proteins which play an important role in the communication process in our body. So these receptors are present on the plasma membrane. It is present in such a way that its active site is projected towards the outer surface of the plasma membrane. So let us know more about chemical messengers in our body. The messages between two neurons or a neuron and a muscle is transmitted by certain chemicals, and these chemicals are known as chemical messengers. These chemical messengers bind to the receptor site of these receptor proteins. So when these chemical messengers bind on the binding site of the receptor protein, the transfer of messages into the cell takes place. After the transfer of messages into the cell, these chemical messengers departs from the receptor protein, and then these receptor protein attains its original shape. So there are different receptor proteins in our body for different chemical messengers, and each chemical messenger is selected for the receptor protein. So these chemical messengers can be classified into two types: hormones and neurotransmitters. So do you know anything about hormones? Yes, I know. Hormones are the chemical messengers which are secreted in the ductless gland. Like ductless gland is nothing but the endocrine gland. So do you know any example? For example, adrenaline. So coming to the next type, neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are nothing but a small molecule which is secreted by the nerve endings. They help in the transfer of nerve impulses. For example, dopamine. And these neurotransmitters is classified into two types: agonist and antagonist. Agonist is a drug which stimulates the receptor to initiate the physiological function. This is helpful when there is lack of natural chemical messengers. And antagonist is a drug which binds to the receptor and prevents its natural function. So this is helpful when there is a need of blocking of the chemical messengers.
So do you know about the therapeutic action of antihistamine drug?
Yes, I know. Antihistamine drug is used to treat the allergies like skin rashes and itching in eyes, throats, nose, and it also used as treat the cold. These allergies is caused due to the secretion of histamine chemicals within the body. This histamine chemical is responsible for the contraction of the smooth muscles within the gut and the bronchi, and it also responsible for the relaxation of some muscles within the walls of blood vessels. These histamine chemical is also responsible for the nasal conjugation associated with the common cold and the allergies due to the pollen and dust. These antihistamine drugs are abolish these histamine reaction within the body, and this also prevents some of the symptoms.
Do you know about antacid drug?
Yes, antacids are the drugs are used to treat the gastric problems. These gastric problems is arise due to the increase in the concentration of hydrochloric acid in the gastric juice. The hydrochloric acid concentration is increases in the gastric juice is due to the histamine. This histamine is helps in the secretion of pepsin and hydrochloric acid. These antacids is helps to decrease in the concentration of hydrochloric acid by the prevention of the histamine reaction with the or interaction with the receptors. So some of the antacids are commonly used are Rantal.
Do you know about neurologically active drugs?
I will explain. Neurologically active drugs. Tranquilizers and analgesics are the neurologically active drugs. They affect the message transfer mechanically in the form of nerve to receptors. Tranquilizers are the class of chemical compounds used in it is used to treat the stress, fatigue, and mild diseases and severe mental diseases. They relieve the anxiety, stress and or excitement by inducing sense of well-being, and it forms the essential component of sleeping pills. They act on higher centers of nervous system. They are also called as psychotherapeutic drugs. These drugs helps the patients to control their and next come to analgesics. Analgesics it relieves the pain without causing any impairment of consciousness, mental confusions or incoordinations or paralysis or other disturbances of nervous system. There are two types. One is non-narcotic drugs and another one is narcotic drugs. Aspirin and paracetamols are the most common non-narcotic drugs. Aspirin inhibits the synthesis of chemicals known as prostaglandins, which stimulates the inflammations in tissues and causes the pains. Aspirin and paracetamol are the antipyretics, and it reduces the fever. Aspirin prevents the platelet coagulations because of its anti-blood clotting action. Aspirin finds use in prevention of heart attack. It is toxic to the liver. Do you know about antimicrobials?
Yes, diseases in humans and animals may be caused by a variety of microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, microbes, and other pathogens. Antimicrobial tends to destroy or prevent the development or inhibit the growth of other microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, fungi, etc. And antibiotics, antiseptics, and disinfectants are the antimicrobials. Let us know about antibiotics. Antibiotics are used as drugs to treat infections because of their low toxicity to humans and animals. Antibiotics were defined as chemical substances produced by microorganisms which can inhibit the growth of microorganisms or even destroy it. However, the development of synthetic method has resulted in the modification of the definitions. Now, antibiotics means chemicals produced wholly or partly by chemical synthesis
even when in low concentration, it inhibits the microbial pathogenic actions. Antibiotics, which inhibit the growth of wide range of gram positive and gram negative bacteria, is called as an broad spectrum antibiotics. And uh, antibiotics which are more effective to the gram positive bacteria or gram negative bacteria is called as narrow spectrum antibiotics. Penicillin G has a narrow spectrum. It is used for the infections, and erythromycin, chloromycin, and chlorophenol are the examples of broad spectrum antibiotics. Let's come into antiseptics and disinfectants. Antiseptics and disinfectants are chemicals which either kill or prevent the growth of microorganisms. Antiseptics are applied to the living tissues such as wounds, cuts, and ulcer, and diseased skin surfaces. Examples are furacin and neomycin. Antiseptics are also used to reduce the odor resulted from the bacterial decomposition in many areas of the body and in the mouth. Therefore, these are mixed with deodorants, face powders, and breath purifiers. Commonly used antiseptics are Dettol, and 2 to 3% of iodine in alcoholic solution is also an antiseptic used for the infections and wounds. And iodoform is also used as an antiseptic for wounds. Disinfectants are applied to inanimate objects such as floors, drainage system, and instruments, etc. The same substance can act as a both antiseptic as well as disinfectant by varying the concentration. For example, 0.2% of phenol act as a antiseptics, and 1% solution is a disinfectant. And the 0.2 to 0.4 ppm concentration of chlorine and sulfur dioxide in very low concentration are the disinfectants.
Sanjana have mentioned many of the therapeutic agents. Now let us study other more therapeutic agents. In that, first one is antifungal drugs. In this, antifungal drugs are used to kill the yeast and fungi that cause the infection in our body of many parts, and they are used to treat common conditions like as athlete foot, ringworm, dandruff, and vaginitis, and etc. And butoconazole, this is also called as Fenstat, and clotrimazole, this is also called as Candid, and ketoconazole, this is also called as Nizral. These are some of the fungicides that is used for the topical applications. And flucytosine and fluconazole and itraconazole, these are fine oral applications. Now let us move for the antiprotozoals, and these are also called as antimalarials. Malaria causes shivering and fever. The extract of some of the plants like root and stem that are extensively used as antimalarials. And Cinchona barca, which gives rise to the quinine, act as one of the antimalarial. However, the most commonly used antimalarial is chloroquine. Let us move to the antiviral drugs. Viruses are smaller than bacteria, as we all know that they consist of a nucleic acid covered by a coat of the protein. Cyclovir, which is effective against chicken pox, and herb